folks. How's everybody feeling out there? Good, good. All right, all right.
Can you hear us okay?
Everyone is,
We need
is
these mics.
looking good, too.
Testing, testing. Okay. Oh, because of the recording? Okay. I understand.
Okay, all right.
Got it. Okay.
So we're going to get started in just one moment. We're just waiting for one of our other panelists, and then we're going to go ahead and get this conversation
Y'all staying for the party? Y'all coming back for the party at least? Okay. All right.
Testing. Yes. I guess I will use this time to make a few announcements. So they will be recording. So hopefully everyone is comfortable being recorded. They're going to record this conversation so that it can be distributed online and so other folks can see this conversation and get this good information. So hopefully you're all comfortable with that. And the second thing I would say is just if you could silence your phones just to make certain that there are no chirps or rings or anything like that take place once we get the conversation started. So if that sounds good for you, I appreciate it.
So the art on the walls is for sale, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
It is for sale. Yes. So definitely take a stroll around and check out the art.
Yeah.
And also remember to come back later on at 2 p.m. for the day party once it gets started so that you can enjoy that. And so, again, we appreciate you being here with us and looking forward to this conversation with our great panelists and learning more about them. And so we're going to get started in just one moment. All right. All right. Yeah. Fantastic. Hey. All right. All right. So good folks. I would say we can kick it off right now, right? All right. So once again, I'm going to give you a welcome. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate being here for this discussion. I think we should give up some love for Drake and Urban Organic.
Yeah,
for putting this together.
And shout out to all of you for getting up early in the morning to come hear us talk about development.
That's right. Dedicated. So we are Ritchie and Clarinda. We are principal and co-founders of the Everyday Sacred. We facilitate conversations and work in the space of urban planning and economic development. We formed our boutique consultancy back in 2019 in order to do this, in order to have more conversations about the ways that we can transform our community. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today in conjunction with the Diaspora Day Party, again, which kicks off today at 2 o'clock. And so we're going to kick this off. We're going to learn some stuff from our panelists, and I'm going to pass it over to Clarinda to talk about our panelists. You want to get us started and just give a brief overview so we can introduce who we have sitting next to us?
For sure, and I'm going to use my notes because it's important to get things right when talking about these brilliant and important people who joined us today. Just wanted to let you know this is the Epiphany Community House. It's in the East Village neighborhood of Detroit. So I just want to orient you to where you are and all of the cool development that's happening across the city, but this neighborhood in particular has some amazing investment happening that, of course, is represented in places like this, but also in the neighborhood as well. So I'm going to start by introducing Chase Cantrell. Chase is the Executive Director of Building Community Value. Building Community Value is a nonprofit dedicated to implementing and facilitating real estate development projects in underserved Detroit neighborhoods. They respond to the aspirations of Detroit residents who are most directly impacted by development in their neighborhoods. What I love about Building Community Value is that you also teach residents how to be developers. So we'll get into that a little bit later today.
And look, I'm a big energy person, so let's show Chase some love. I believe in
constant, let's clap it up for him.
Let's keep that energy going. So appreciate you being here with us, Chase. All right.
Yes, Richie's the best hype man. We're going to keep the energy flowing, okay? And we got Sonya Greene, who is a registered nurse by trade, but also a developer of a project called The Shift. Those are powerful words.
That's right.
It features Linwood Fresh Market, a Black-owned grocer in the city of Detroit, located at 12752 Linwood. So go check it out because it's open right now, right, Sonya? 12737 Linwood Street. The Shift will feature a fresh food market, barbershop, hair salon, 4-unit newly renovated apartment complex, and nonprofit office space in the Dexter-Linwood area. So Sonya's doing some dope stuff as well.
That's right, that's right. Show
So
some love, show some love.
All right, all the way to my right, your left, is Dennis Perkins, founder and CEO of Civitas. Is that how you say it? Civitas, Commercial Real Estate Services. Civitas advises corporate, government, institutional, education, and nonprofit owners and tenants in the country's most dynamic urban growth markets. They focus on transformative placemaking, transit-oriented office projects, over 20,000 square feet that establish a thriving economic base, create jobs, and deliver amenities to their communities. So, Dennis, thank you.
That's right,
welcome.
that's right. Let's show some love, folks.
The native Detroiter.
That's right.
Went to Renaissance, you said, so don't beat him up if you went to Cass or King.
All right,
And he's here for the weekend.
You know we got to get that started. Right, that's right,
Yeah,
that's right. Give it up. All right.
All right, and last but certainly not least is Chico Sorrell, leading Detroit future trends in the McDougal-Hunt neighborhood, Black Bottom, and Paradise Valley. So some really powerful historic neighborhoods in the east side of Detroit, on the east side of Detroit. Detroit Future Trends' mission is to reinvigorate neighborhood infrastructures in city of Detroit impacted by economic and social turmoil of the last 5 decades. So, Chico, thank you and welcome. We appreciate you. Grew up on the east side of Detroit, still living in the city. So, we love to see people investing back in the communities that they live in. So, let's clap it up for Chico.
That's right, that's right, that's right.
All right. Ritchie.
Yeah.
You ready to get into this?
I'm ready to get into it.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
So we're going to have a fluid conversation. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to engage with us. So there are people in this room, in this audience, that are doing really cool development projects as well. So we want to hold space for you to also contribute to these conversations. So we'll call on you to engage and to be a part of the dialogue. But first, we want to hear from our panelists. And really turn it over to you to talk about, kick it off by talking about what you think are the most important aspects of the work that you do and how that contributes to what we call buying back the block today. Anyone can start. Feel free to jump in, and we're going to pass the mic. If you're on my side, I'll pass it this way, and Ritchie will pass the mic that way. So who wants to start? All right, Chase.
All right, good morning, everyone. So, starting with the positive, there is so much opportunity in the city of Detroit. And there are so many black and brown Detroiters who are really taking advantage of the opportunity, right? Like many of us live in neighborhoods where we see vacant residential spaces, vacant commercial on our corridors, and people are asking, what do I do with this property? Like how do I acquire it? How do I create it into something cool like the Shift? How do I reinvigorate and revitalize my community? And people are seeking out those resources, and unlike a decade ago, those resources actually exist now. So if you go to places, other black cities, right, Memphis, Baltimore, New Orleans, we're doing things in Detroit that other cities are beginning to ask questions about. How are you doing that? How are you teaching black people how to do real estate development? How are you getting the resources and the capital into neighborhoods to do these projects? And we're actually innovating in ways that other people are looking to us to recreate what we've built here. So I always talk about it as an ecosystem and a pipeline, right? So at the very beginning of this pipeline is my org. So building community value, we teach Detroiters how to do real estate development. And these are folks who maybe have never done it before. Some of them are nonprofits. Some of them may have done, a single family rehab, but they want to scale up or they want to do more. They want to understand how to get capital, how to talk to banks, how to talk to philanthropy, really just how to make these projects happen. So that's at the first level. We have Capital Impact Partners has an equitable development initiative. So these are for folks who want to do like a $3 million, $5 million, $10 million project. So you can graduate from my program. You can graduate up to this program. And then we have a networking and advocacy group in Detroit called the Real Estate Association of Developers for black developers in the city. So there's networking opportunities every single month. We're talking to the city and to state government about how we get more resources to black developers in the city So we've created this ecosystem, again, that didn't exist a decade ago, and now we have other people coming to Detroit saying, all right, something's happening here. We want to learn from you all. So we're doing something right.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. And Sonya, you want to? I wanted to pass the mic to you, and we'll just pass it this way because you are one of those developers and communities. So you want to talk a little bit about your development, what that looked like for you, and how did you get that inspiration, and how did it all come together?
Okay, good morning, everyone. My situation is somewhat different. The property that I own had been in my family since 1982.
Okay.
So the property had actually been black-owned since the '67 riots.
Okay.
And so my uncle had purchased the property from Mr. Gowles, who then, he bought it from a Jewish gentleman right after the riots. So that property, it was a liquor store. So, and we all know the city of Detroit, how the liquor stores, there's a liquor store, there's a church, there's a liquor store, there's a church. So I got in, so in 2017, when I purchased the property from my aunt, I got it just came to me, I got to change, I got to do something because Linwood Dexter corridor has always had a rich, black, proud history. I mean, there were businesses up and down Linwood, up and down Dexter for years prior to the riots. So being a nurse for 28 years, I saw the devastating effects of poor eating, poor choices, just poor living. And so, we are some of the most unhealthiest people on the planet. And you ask yourself, why are we so unhealthy? Well, look at the types of foods that are in our area. So they always call Detroit a food desert. I don't consider it a desert because there is food. It's just not nutritious, nutrient-dense, healthy food. So during the pandemic, and we were dropping like flies, everyone was affected, by the pandemic, but it really devastated the black community. And so you ask yourself, well, wow, we're some of the most, like I said before, unhealthiest people on the planet. So I just prayed and I asked God, give me the strength to endure this. Now, as far as any type of funding, I tried that. That was not what worked for me. I had to sell my dream home to realize this dream. And like I said on Channel 7, I would do it again. I saw a need in that community, and I wanted to make a change. And so that whole thing about each one, teach one, it's not a cliche to me. It is really how I live. And I have people that come in the store and they say, Sonya, thank you for putting this store in my neighborhood. And I'll just tell you guys a little story. It's so funny. So I have a lottery machine in the store, right? So the lottery commission came in the store to hook everything up. And when the lady came in my store, she dropped the bags and she looked and she said, I want to say something. And I said, well, what do you want to say? She lived in Alpena. She says, I don't want to offend anyone. And I said, no, go ahead, speak freely. And she looked me dead in my face and she said, this store looks like it does not belong in this neighborhood. And I said, well, where do you think you might see a store like this? And she said, Royal Oak, Birmingham. And I looked at her and I said, that's the look that I was going for. And she said, Sonya, you nailed it. And so it's funny to me because we allow shops to set up in our community and we accept the bare minimum, and we still go to them. And I don't think we as a people have yet to understand the power of our dollar. So when you come in my store, there's no bulletproof glass, there's no roll down shutters, there's no bars. I don't go places that look, that look like that because it tells me you're scared to operate business, but you're not scared to take my money. Right. Yeah. And so we have to kind of shift, how we have behaved through these years and what we allow, and what we accept.
Right. Oh, wow. I love that. That's right. That is so inspirational. I appreciate you sharing that. I love that energy, too. Yeah. So let's shift to the gentleman right here on my right. And so I know that you all have some perspectives that we want to bring in this conversation. And I'm going to start with you, Dennis, because you bring sort of a broader perspective on this, being someone who is doing things at kind of like the national scale. Let's talk about what your firm does, but also how you see this fitting into the context of the conversation of how do we buy back the block.
Again, thank you very much, and I want to thank Drake for inviting me. I am from Detroit, went to Detroit Renaissance, ended up at Florida A&M and met some of my best friends there. And I'm sure you guys know a bunch of people from FAM. And I actually fell into real estate through an internship. I talked my way into an internship in New York and started representing big firms and realized that there were no black people in commercial real estate brokerage. And so I was representing groups like U.S. Trust and just a lot of large firms. And so I started working on nonprofits and working with different organizations like NAACP or NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and wanted to figure out how can we bring those anchor institutions into our neighborhoods. So I started Civitas. And what I realized is that a lot of developers that were taking advantage of our people and our land and our neighborhoods. And so we developed Civitas to represent the civic, the groups, the neighborhoods. And so about 10 years ago, I jumped out of Trammell Crow, started Civitas, and our first client was the United Negro College Fund. We represented them in their acquisition of a 50,000 square foot condominium interest in Shaw near Howard University in DC, right? That actually started a progression of development of small businesses in the neighborhood around Howard University, black businesses. It was a community that was, we bought in Teach for America, the building became our people, right? So Teach for America, which I think a lot of people have a lot of feelings about Teach for America, but it was a bunch of young black people that went into the schools, and they worked with UNCF to create programs for the different schools. So that was the first project that we worked on that was of size. It was a 100,000 square foot office building, and below that, Donnie Simpson's son created a muffin restaurant. We created a salon, a black salon, a woman that had been there for years. We moved her away and brought her back in. And we had a tailor, and we had a shoe repair shop, and we had a record shop, right? And so all this stuff was in this community in Shaw above the metro. And that actually spurred more development in the area. And so it actually became part of the concept of buy back the neighborhood, right? This was in a location that had been an open air drug market for years and years and years. And UNCF coming into the neighborhood, leaving downtown DC, coming into Shaw, actually spurred a lot of the development. Now we can discuss what happened to that development as gentrification happened in that area, but there were a lot of black and brown businesses that popped up that are still there and that are supporting the neighborhood. And so the values that they have gone up, and so now they can actually go and buy other properties. There's a woman there, Wanda, who had a hair salon, who has now gone back to another neighborhood in Anacostia. I don't know if you guys know DC, but she now moved one of her locations into Anacostia and has started a school. And so she took what happened at that corner on 7th and S in DC and then moved over to Anacostia to create some more development. So I think bringing anchor institutions to different parts of the city is important, and that's what we do. So we represent Howard University. We've helped them move into different locations around the city. We represent the District of Columbia. And I don't know how Detroit does it, but in the district, they have actually moved agencies around the city to spur economic development in underserved markets. And so we just opened up a 100,000 square foot office building for the Department of General Services in Anacostia at a location that had been underserved for, since riots. And so that has now spurred more growth. We have a lot more city contractors moving into that area. We have now a lot of the larger retailers looking at it because now they have the foot traffic. And there's a lot of residential that's being developed there because they're seeing that, well, there's a lot of residential that's being developed there because you have the office, you now have retail, and now the residential's coming in. So you're creating a new community of black folk and black businesses in an area that had been black, but that was owned, and this is another piece, that was owned by a bunch of people that were from the outside. People who lived in the suburbs owned the strip malls and owned the land. We were able to pull together a group of black folks to invest in it and develop it. So we also bring in the architects, the engineers, the environmental groups, all black as wherever we can, so that there is more than just the one piece of owning land. It's also spurring economic development in the whole quote-unquote waterfall of the development.
That's amazing. So, Chico, let's turn it over to you because I think
that's right. So clap it up.
So what I'm really curious about is that I know that in a city that's 139 square miles, you chose Black Bottom, Paradise Valley, and McDougal Hunt. And if you're familiar at all with urban renewal in the mid-20th century, these are neighborhoods that existed and held space for black thriving that were decimated through policy. And so I'm really curious, as you're talking about, why you chose that neighborhood, what does buying back the block mean to you, why it's so powerful for you to be in those particular neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. How's everybody today? Good. Yeah. First of all, I grew up in the downtown area, and but on the that Verner Street was really the stopping point, the end of the development downtown. And I lived on Lafayette, and as a kid, I couldn't go really across Verner. That was kind of like the bad side in a sense. But as it was said just now, that was really at one time a prestigious area for black people. It was known as Black Bottom Paradise Valley. So as I transitioned out of the entertainment industry, I kind of looked at the real estate industry and decided that, hey, I want to develop, and I want to develop in this area. I want to bring this area back, and I would love to make it pretty much a black community. It took a long time for me to really put everything together, and I'm still putting things together. But literally, I'm buying up the block, just blocks and blocks, and trying to really connect everything. And then now I'm trying to do a development, a huge development in that area. But as of right now, I was able to buy roughly 15 units, and I'm rehabbing those units, putting people into those places right there, and really just trying to create from the land that's around those units. And so basically, I just feel like if all these developments that are going on in the city right now are really not for us, really, I said, hey, I'll be that catalyst to do something for us. You know, I'm not trying to be prejudiced against anyone, but at the end of the day, I just really feel like we're not being supported as black people. So it was just very important for me to do this development in Black Bottom, and preferably for our people, for my people. And so right now, I'm hoping to get the financing that I need to take it to another level. And I'm working with Huntington Bank and some few other funders. And they seem to understand and to really support my vision. So, you know, so that's basically what I'm trying to do with the Black Bottom area.
And thank you for your work there. So you touched on something, Chico, about, you know, why it's important for black people to do this kind of work. The reality is the development community is almost exclusively white, and each of you are doing behemoth work. I mean, these are major tasks, regardless to whether it's a small development or massive developments where you're representing universities and anchor institutions. I want to get into specifically what are some of the challenges and opportunities that you see in your lived experience working on the projects that you're doing, and feel free to speak openly and freely about where those opportunity gaps exist, and what you think solutions might look like. Do you want to start, Sonya? Let's do it.
Okay, so like I said, as for me, one of the barriers was when I would go to these traditional banks and I would ask for funding and financing, they wanted 3 years of business tax returns. So if you are a startup business, a new entrepreneur, you don't have 3 years of tax returns to show. So that, of course, you know, that's a big X across the page. And banks and financial institutions are very I want to say hesitant to support and give money to. It's a risk factor. So, and I'm not, this is no bash on the city of Detroit. I love this city, but I tried the Motor City Match. I tried the DEGC. I tried the DDF. And so I basically, the first excuse that they said was, we're not in your area. And then the next excuse was, oh, you just don't know the right people. And the last excuse that I was given was, you own too much. And I said to myself, you got to be kidding me, because I had real estate. I was like, what do you mean I own too much? I said, well, please explain to me how I can go down in Midtown and it's a boarded up property, and then 6 to 8 months later I come back and it's a beautiful coffee shop selling $12 muffins. Who's financing those people? Because obviously those are the people that I need to talk to. So it didn't, like I said, it didn't work for me, and I'm quite grateful. Don't get me wrong at all. I'm glad that it didn't work for me, because I was able to sell a piece of property to do what I just did, and I am mortgage free. I have no hanging mortgage. I have, I'm not indebted, so it's just a joy for me, but my situation is somewhat unique. So one of the barriers I would say to this is trying to find funding. I don't want to use the word almost impossible, but it is an arduous process. And so if I could tell you guys anything, don't give up. Just keep going, don't give up, because it will become kind of discouraging trying to secure the fundings. But as the panelists have just, they just said today, there is funding out there, and I would just advise anyone to take advantage of that.
All right, appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to build on what Sonya said, and I will say it's almost impossible. So it is almost impossible to get capital when you're first starting out, right? Traditional banks, pre-2008, there was more funding for, an investor. The developer, specifically thinking about residential and how most people get started, doing a single family or duplex in Detroit, right? Pre-2008, you can get a loan as a burgeoning developer. Post-2008, most of those products just dried up, right? You couldn't go to a JP Morgan or Bank of America or Huntington, traditional banks in the city, and get the kind of money that you need to do, a simple project in the city. And it doesn't matter if you're starting with a single family or you're doing a commercial space, right? It's just very difficult to get capital in the city unless you know the right people, right? Which is really unfortunate, right? Knowing the right people is a way that lenders, it's language that masks how they manage risk, but they see black people as risk, right? They see black communities as risk. And Dennis and I, we were talking earlier about how not just in Detroit, but in black cities in general, so Detroit, Baltimore, Memphis, name your black city or black community, banks will label those places as risk. And also, just the market in general, if you're wondering how much your property is worth, if your property is at 6 Mile in Wyoming, pick that up, put it in Royal Oak, right, or Birmingham, the valuation will skyrocket, right? So there's a real difference in valuation in black communities. For anyone who's interested, Dr. Andre Perry has a really great study on the devaluation of black assets in black neighborhoods around the nation. So it's not just Detroit, but our assets are being undervalued, which when you approach a bank, right, impacts how much money you can get. The more your property is worth, the more you can get from a bank. So we have a valuation problem in Detroit. We have a risk problem, but from the perspective of what banks and CDFIs, community development financial institutions, see as risk, and also where the city is putting capital, right? Like the city is starting off with their strategic neighborhoods in neighborhoods that already have the structural components that they think will bring the neighborhood back, right? So neighborhoods that are already either doing well or on that cusp of doing well, right? So you have middle income residents or near middle income residents. You think that there's already capital available around or near that neighborhood. That's where the city is putting their investment. So if you're not in one of those communities, and I see this with participants, students who come through building community value, they're like, well, I'm not in a strategic neighborhood. How do I get capital? And it's hard, right? Like we actually have to go to bat for those folks to say, all right, let's sit down with a lender with you to see if we can advocate on your behalf to get you capital. But in many neighborhoods, it is very difficult to do.
Right. I appreciate that response. Chase, before you pass the mic and
Yeah.
give the other panelists a chance to respond to this question, I have a question for you. Because
Sure.
you work with small entrepreneurs, like, is there a specific site or are there resources that you steer them to find resources? Because I often hear like it's hard to find information. How do you like navigate that gap of getting information about resources that are available?
So Building Community Value has a resources page.
Okay.
And actually, the University of Michigan just helped us revamp the page, so it's easier to use. There's more resources on it. So that's where I tend to tell people is bcvdetroit.org/resources.
Right.
But that's why when I talk about a pipeline, there are more organizations that exist in Detroit now that people can call up and say, hey, I have a building in a particular neighborhood. Can you connect me to Invest Detroit or another CDFI? Can you connect me to the right person at the city? Like we become a funnel for people who are interested in this work to get them to the right place. Right. So I say start with BCV, start with Capital Impact, start with REAP. Those three organizations help to guide people into the resource stream.
All right, appreciate it. We're gonna have to get you to repeat that and make certain that folks get that information. Let me pass the mic this way.
In Washington, D.C., we have a program called the Certified Business Entity Program, where any projects that you do with the District of Columbia, a developer has to partner with a minority firm or a certified business. And they actually help with the seed money a lot of times to help those smaller developers to be a part of it. It's a requirement. from the District of Columbia. And it has helped a number of developers become larger. You know, most of the developers start with the small, they flipping houses, 1, 2 here, there. Once they actually get to know one of these large developers, the developers will turn to them and say, we're doing a large development in downtown DC, will you partner with me? Now, once you partner with them, you now have their resources. You have access to what they've learned, you have access to their bankers, you have access to the relationships, and once you get in that door, you actually, you look up and it's like being in Oz. Everything is open to you now, right? You're like, wow, look at all this money that's there, right? And in DC, we have a very frothy black developer market. And I don't know if you've heard of all these different developers, Jair Lynch and Dante's partners, and they're not only in DC, but now they've branched out to Prince George's County, New York, Atlanta, Miami, because they were part of this original program Marion Barry started back in the 70s to help black people get access to capital. And he said, if you want to do anything with any land or any contracts in the District of Columbia, you will have a black partner, period. That's Bob Johnson, that's Kathy Hughes, that's Don Peoples. It all started from there. So I don't know if Detroit has that kind of program where there are mandates that you have to partner with someone, because that opens the door to everything that we're talking about here, right? Because it is about capital. It is about access, exposure, and capital.
And it also sounds like there's a little bit of knowledge share in there as well. So you're getting that access to capital, but by partnering with a larger developer, you're also getting access to knowledge that can be vital in helping you overcome hurdles as well. So I heard a little bit of that in what you said as well. Chico, what do you have to say?
Well, now that I'm more into this, I'm fully into this project because I am a retired teacher as well. So I spend a lot of time working with kids, but
shout out to teachers, educators.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. But now I'm starting to see that the funding is out there. And in a particular area that I'm developing in, I'm hoping and I'm really thinking that that money is going to come through. But even if it doesn't, I feel like I'm going to get it done because I know too many people with money and with certain goals and aspirations that they want to do that are not having a problem teaming up with me to make this thing happen. So I just believe that we have the financial resources here as black people. We should just put it together and make it happen. We don't really have to beg or ask anybody really to do anything for us. We can do it ourselves if it comes to that. But yes, I would love to have the funding that will make things way more simpler. But again, I'm really just now starting the funding part of things. It was just important for me to secure the property, secure the land. In this particular area, that land now is valued 10 times more than when I first started buying that land. I started buying that land in the houses around that area around 20 years ago. So at that time, nobody wanted that land. You know, nobody could see the opportunity that could be made from building this part of Detroit up. It was drug infested. The property values were depreciated. So it just made things difficult, you know. And then once the land bank was created with the new mayor, with Mike Duggan, I would say that made things a little bit simpler for me because the land bank, they had a program where they started tearing down dilapidated houses and started clearing land and stuff like that. And I was just buying more. The more they cleared, the more I bought. So now I have at least 40 parcels of land and, like I said, 15 units. And I'm trying to piece this thing together. And I feel very confident that I'm going to get it done. And I want to have something I want to be able to develop something for people who can't get the assistance because they either make too much or don't make enough, you know. But the people who usually don't make enough get some type of funding. There's so many programs for people who are underpaid or don't have the finances together. But for those people who make, I think, somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000 a year, they don't have a lot of support. They don't have a lot of help. So I want to really touch in and kind of like narrow my direction towards those people. I want to get those people in this community. Those are good people. They work every day. The credit may not be all that, but that's because of certain circumstances. At the end of the day, I just feel like those people are underrepresented, and I want to do something for those people.
Give it up. I appreciate that. And actually, both of the points, well, all of the points have been shared, but specifically when you talked about the program in DC, that's designed in order to make certain you have black developers involved in projects, and you talking about the need to make certain that programs are expansive, that they're not only looking at sort of getting people in the game, but also like making certain that there's affordability. I recognize that a lot of these programs are, they are programs that exist, but also the need to kind of revamp or enhance programs. And many of those models, some of those models are being developed here in Detroit, but also sounds like there are models that are happening in other places. Are there programs that you're excited for, or programs that you see having potential to encourage more development? Is there something that you want to see more of, or something you want to see less of in terms of helping to support black development and help people transform communities? There's someone who wants to take on that question. What do you want to see more of? What are you excited about? Or what do you want to see less of that you feel like is just not working?
So I'll start with the more of, right? So I'll never forget a moment in 2017 when it was a panel discussion like this, led by Lauren Hood, who's the head of our planning commission, and she's a great Afro-urbanist in the city of Detroit. And she was interviewing a black elder, and who does development. He owns a lot of land throughout the city, a lot of buildings. He's been doing it for decades. And I was a little younger at that time, like mid-30s, early 30s. And I sort of looked up to him saying, like, where have you been all these years? Like, I've been looking for access to someone like you for the knowledge sharing, but where do we find black developers who are mostly men in our community, like at that time, doing this work? Like, how do we get access to you? Sort of realizing that there was no ecosystem at the time, he's like, well, I'm here now. And I sort of flash forward to today, where now all of these developers who have been doing this work have entry points to mentor, right? So it's easier to go into a networking event or program and meet people like him who can say, yeah, let's sit down, let's talk about the projects I've done, let's look at your project, let's think about the resources to connect you with lenders in the city. Like, there's more of an open door than there was before. So I want to see more of that, and I'm seeing more of it. Spaces for black women in particular to talk about the development work that they're already doing and get younger black women into this process, because women in general, black, white, other, are underrepresented in the development ecosystem. But I'm seeing in Detroit, black women begin to share knowledge and learn from each other and sort of build up the work that they're doing. So I definitely want to see more of that. So, yeah.
All right, appreciate it. Sonya, did you want to answer that question? What do you want to see more of? What do you think we need less of? And what are you excited about?
Okay, so I want to see more women developers. That is correct. We are very underrepresented as far as the real estate market goes and the commercial market goes. And what's so interesting, I wanted to just kind of piggyback on what Joe said in regards to the properties in the city that they're redeveloping. I don't know if the audience knows, but Linwood, Dexter, Rosa Park, and Woodrow Wilson are all on the city's master plan for redevelopment. Many of you have driven down Hamilton and Highland Park. You won't believe it. The streets are marked up like Kercheval. So you know that there's coming in 2018, after I purchased the building from my late son, I noticed a bike lane. And we all know what the bike lane means. I mean, we all know, we all know what that. Yeah, that's key indicators on what's going on. So I'll tell you right now, I encourage anyone to go on the City of Detroit's webpage and just look at those areas that I named. They are getting ready to start the Dexterscape, and Dexter is about to look like something in Royal Oak. Then it's going to Linwood, then it's going to Rosa Park, and it's all tying in. So if you look at it, like say if you're taking an aerial view of the City of Detroit, and they're honing in on all the redevelopment, the Linwood Dexter area, it's getting ready to pop. Tell me what we ought to create a black book where it's a book and it's nothing but, how to get to developers, how to get to contractors, electricians in the city should create a black book. Almost like the old school yellow pages.
There you go. Got some support for that. Got some love for that. So I'm going to pass it this way. And then I know you got some questions. We want to get around to some questions.
So I keep going back to DC and this CBE program, but they actually have a list of all the certified business entities in all the different facets of real estate and other businesses also that you can go to when it's time to respond to an RFP. You can say, I need a black architect, and it'll have 20 of them that are certified, and they're certified that they are minority or they're they're owned by city residents or long-term residents. So there's all these different categories that they've created. So I keep going back to what DC is doing. But what I would like to see is more of these equitable RFPs coming out of municipalities where it has to be led by a black developer. New York has one going on right now in Harlem, and DC has one going on U Street and 14th Street. And it's interesting because you have all these developers that are pulling in all their black resources, but then you have the white financing people coming to them saying, how can I be down? How can I help you, right? So it flips the script a bit so that the black people are in control of the development and bringing the team that they want to have to the table. And it allows them to be able to design the spaces for us. It allows them to be able to bring the type of retail, entertainment, housing, and offices. The one on 14th and U actually is, it's where the NAACP has signed to relocate their headquarters from Baltimore to DC. So you have this building that, again, we focus on anchor tenants because we believe that anchors help build the community around it. But it's just a fantastic way, and that is, that's brought in developers, black developers from around the country to compete on this. And so now we have to, the developers that are in the district have to sharpen their knives because they're going up against people that are from around the country. And what is it? Iron makes iron better and sharper. So it's really exciting to see it, and it's a big thing in the district, and it's good to see. So more of those. I don't know if Detroit has that program or something like that, but it really helps to get people going and learn more about the different architects, engineers, et cetera. So
Yeah, I love the idea of black-driven development in neighborhoods. A lot of times we look for those key indicators where someone else is telling us what our value is, right? But what does it look like when we start pooling together, investing in our resources, and reclaiming value in our communities? Because the value is never left. It's just that we're told that it has no value. We hold space, and then other people come in and say, now this is valuable, and then we start chasing. But what I love about what each of you are doing is that you are reclaiming value in neighborhoods and saying, we know that it's value, it's always been that way, and we are the key indicator. So Chico, I would love to hear, what do you want to see more of or less of as you think about development and opportunities here?
Yeah, what I would like to see is just more black people, affluent especially, just coming back to Detroit. I don't know why everybody left in the first place. I mean, really, I understand.
It's Liddy over here.
What's that?
I said, it's Liddy over here.
Okay. Yeah. I just really I mean, I could have left too, but I just really wanted to be in Detroit. I just really love to live around certain people, and I just wish those certain people would come back to Detroit. I mean, I understand that the development that's being done out in the suburbs like Southfield and Grosse Pointe or whatever, I understand why people would want to live out there, but I think that we as black people have to stop going out to these developments that are not created by us and for us. We could bring the city back, because I just look in this room, and I know so many people in here. I know it's at least $1 million sitting right here in this audience. I mean, so if that was all brought back to Detroit and brought back to my development area, we could do some great things. So it's just really not just about me. It's really, I get the love and the enthusiasm from the people that I hang out with and know from college and stuff like that. And I just say, listen, how can we not all together doing this right here in Detroit, in this Black Bottom, Paradise Valley neighborhood? Let's make it great again. Let's do that for real, and I'm ready to hook up with everybody or anybody that's willing to work with me on this thing.
And it's a lot of power in this room, and we want to turn it over to you and hear from you so that we can make certain that we start to build community here. So if you have a question, stand up, speak loudly. We will repeat the question if you don't have the mic, because it might get logistically challenging to do that. But we have our first question, and state your name, state your question, and anyone can jump in and answer.
So this isn't a question. I'm Terry Wynn. My wife, Vicki Wynn, invited me here with the panelists here. So
Shout out to the Wynn.
Here. Thank you. Sonya, I met you 2 weeks ago. I am Linwood. We discussed who used to cut my hair. I bought my neighborhood, as we're speaking about buying the block, my mom lives on Linwood and Sturgeville. I see, from her steps, I see your store. My dad comes in there every Friday, and we'll make sure we come in and introduce ourselves to you. My neighborhood, a lot of resources. A lot of my friends didn't leave, so I come back to the neighborhood maybe 3 times a week to visit my mom and dad. I pass by your store all the time. My neighborhood is wealth. It's looking kind of bad right now, but when you came and opened that store, man, that was like flowers in the springtime. So, and when you said someone came in your store and said it doesn't look like it should be here, it really doesn't, but it should. It needs to be there. I actually live on Glendale. My parents live on Linwood and Sturgeville now. Detroit Central graduate. Love my neighborhood, love what you've done, love all the things that are going on. When you mentioned the bike lane, I saw that bike lane 12 years ago, and I said, wow, something's getting ready to happen here, because I've been riding bikes my whole life. They never had a lane for us. Yeah. So this is where I needed to be. My wife was like, baby, would you go somewhere with me this morning? I need you to go. I am glad I came.
We're glad you're here.
Hats off to you all.
That's a beautiful community testament. It's so important to give these developers their flowers and let them know how meaningful it is at the work that they're doing, because I know it's not easy.
That's what's up, right?
It's not easy.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Other questions? I mean, if there's a question. Oh, young man right here has a question. Sure. There you go, young man.
So it's kind of a everyone answer question. Have any of you been through any stock market or home investment problems?
It's a great question.
Great
Thank
question.
you.
Right.
Home investment
That's
or
right.
stock market.
That's right. Give it up.
This young investor wants to know. He said, where do I put my money?
Right.
Anybody want to talk about that?
Anybody want to talk about that?
I'll just talk about a home investment issue, which goes back to Andre Perry's thing. I was looking at refinancing my home a couple of years ago, and I live in a neighborhood that's a relatively nice neighborhood in Washington, D.C., and we had an appraiser come so that they can, appraise the property. And it wasn't a black person, and she came in, and because my wife and I are in commercial real estate, we started asking her questions and giving her information, making sure that we knew what was going on. She sent us a note back saying, I can't appraise your house, so I'm going to have to pass that on to someone else. The next appraiser came in the house and had dreads, right? And the brother came through and gave us our appraisal. But it was very interesting to see how these things happen, right? So she came in expecting one thing and got another and said, I'm going to have to back away from this. So exactly what Andre Perry is saying, no matter where your property is, if it's black owned, they're going to look at it and devalue it. So That's, to answer your question, that's one of the issues I've had.
Anyone else?
So to build on that, this is a huge problem throughout the city, right? So especially for, actually it doesn't matter if you're doing residential or commercial, but for the general rehabber who's starting with a single family home, and this is why it's so important to know what you're getting into before you actually make an acquisition. Like a lot of these, the market is saying, let's use an example. The market might be saying that the house is only worth $60,000, but it's been sitting in the land bank, right, for a decade, 5 to 10 years, and it's going to cost $80,000 or $100,000 to bring it back. But the market is only saying, even once it's rehabbed, it's worth less than that. So any savvy developer, just do the math, right? It doesn't make sense to do that project. But that is many of our homes and many of our commercial properties throughout the city. So what happens in a lot of classes, not just BCV or capital impact, is people will come into the course wanting to do, whether it's a single family project or a 5,000 square foot commercial space, and they're like, all right, how do I make this work? And then we put all the numbers in, right? Let's talk to a general contractor. Let's see how much it's actually going to cost to bring this property back. Okay, we have that number. Let's look at comps. Let's look at comparable properties to see how much the market is saying it's worth. It's less than the amount needed to actually bring it back. So where does the subsidy come from? Where do you fill what we call the gap? Right. And literally, some black developers are going in teaching city council staff members about this economic analysis, right? Developers are coming to city council talking about the gap all the time, white developers, black developers, all across the city, because it's true in most of our neighborhoods. The amount that it costs to bring back is not what the market is saying it's worth. So you need government. You need government to fill that gap. And again, we have limited resources in all of our cities. And it's a question of where are our representatives willing to put the city resources to fill those gaps. And right now, we're not doing it in single family. Like, our current administration really is favoring multifamily housing, right? This new construction that you see on Kirchville and other places, because per unit is cheaper to put money into those versus our traditional single family homes that we see in 65% of Detroit neighborhoods. So we're losing those homes. We're losing the structure of our neighborhoods, which is why you see so much vacancy throughout the city. So we're not using our resources properly. And I wanted to jump in earlier with Dennis's point about DC's ability to use the word black, right, to specifically target black developers in a good way, right, to support black developers. I don't know if folks remember, but in 2006, citizens in the state of Michigan voted on something called Prop 2. And this basically was trying to end affirmative action, but it went further. It said that cities, the state, universities, any sort of extension of government could not specifically use race in contracting, in admissions, et cetera. So the city of Detroit literally cannot say the word black in terms of the way that it structures its ordinances and its policies. So we come up with all these other terms, right? Legacy Detroiters. I don't know if anybody followed like the marijuana ordinance, but the city got sued 3 or 4 times because we kept trying new language, right? What if we say Legacy Detroiters? What if we say this? What if we say that? And other folks who do not look like most people in this room were suing the city saying, we don't want you to actually benefit black people because of Prop 2. It was a constitutional amendment for our state. So it becomes a little harder to actually target those resources at black people in the city of Detroit, even though, yes, we could probably push further, but our city, our legal department is risk averse in some ways, not wanting to get sued.
Right. Yes, just quickly, because in DC, we can't either. And so there becomes a point system, long-time resident, underrepresented groups, city-owned, the business is based in the district. So there's a number of things you can get more and more points based upon all these different things. So if you've lived in Southeast for 76 years or whatever, you have more points than others would be. So that's a way to deal with it. But there are certified businesses that are not minority. And they are actually large national firms who have set up a small local firm to be able to qualify as certified, right? And so we have to deal with that. But and so I say black, that was more in the 70s, and that was more Marion Barry in that time.
Um, you guys are correct as it relates to the financing, the way certain things have to be said and can't be said. You guys are right about that. But I just really believe also that we can create our own market. We already know that the housing situation is depressed as it relates to what they're going to be appraised at. But I don't think that stopped any of these other developers from doing what they were doing. And we as black people, to me, we have to think more of like, that we can create whatever we want and we will create that market. We will make those houses valuable once we put those houses together, once we put those communities together. So yes, if you're trying to get the financing for every single thing that you do, which it does make sense because, once you got the funding, you can reach your vision that much faster. But just like what Sonya is doing, I mean, that building, when I first saw it, it was jacked up. It was terrible. But she had a vision, and she used whatever funding source she had at the time to make it happen. And now what she's doing is creating a market in that area. And that area now, when people are doing stuff like that, even if it's piece by piece, is going to eventually come together and it's going to have everything that many communities or many people look at when they choose community to live in. So again, I just feel like in McDougal Hunt area, I'm not going to, because I ran into that so many times as relates to trying to get the financing to put these houses back together. Of course, in my eyes, I looked at the houses worth $200,000, but the funders looked at the houses worth maybe 20, But I said, if I fix them all up and built around it, we just created the $200,000 that I envisioned and more. So to me, just like these other people do, let's create the market. Let's make this community what we envision it to be.
All right, appreciate that. And I also want to thank you all for your responses. I want to give the young man credit because he asked a question that got us really talking. So
Got us fired up.
you keep asking those powerful questions. You really got to start it. And I have a follow-up question related to what the young man asked. In terms of finding access to capital, we know that there are tools out there that allow you to pool capital. I'm thinking like community land trust, allow people to purchase. You got crowd funding. You got real estate investment trust. Like what's stopping people from, or what's stopping the ability to utilize some of these tools for purchasing land collectively and for people pooling money? Is there something that you see that as an opportunity? I've heard about it being done in other cities, but is there something that you see as being useful to that conversation around allowing people to invest collectively in transformation? Anybody could take that.
It's exposure and having the community know that these things exist. Crowdsourcing is an interesting thing. Lanier Richardson out of Chicago he's using crowdsourcing to buy strip centers in Baltimore, Chicago, and in Columbus, Ohio now. And he's, looking for 3,000 people to invest in it and in their communities, right? So there are opportunities for people to give $250 to invest in their community so they can actually buy back the block by owning this little strip mall that might be on the corner that's been black frequented for years, but not black owned. And so that's a model that he's using in Baltimore right now, and he's got 2 shopping centers. So I'm not sure if that's happening in Detroit, but that is, it's exposure and letting the community know that these opportunities exist if they are created by someone here in the mission.
Appreciate that. Does anyone else want to address that before we move on?
We have a couple hands in the audience too, but if any last words on that, but I definitely want to make sure we get out there to the audience.
How you doing? My name is Marvin Yates, and I do some work in the community with an organization called Prosper Us Detroit, where we train people and help them get into business in the city. What I found is that quite often the crowdfunding situations such as Patron the City or Build Institutes, Kiva funds, and things like that, they can be utilized, but we have a problem internally in our community with our inability to work together. we have a trust factor that has existed for years and years and years. And so for us to come together and work together on any given projects is very difficult. And finding people who are like-minded and then organizing that is hard to do. But maybe things like this can help those situations and we can grow. I have a host. We do our program 5 or 6 different cohorts around the city every 12 weeks. And so I came up with an idea to purchase some commercial property to be able to house and lease to some of these graduates. And I've had the hardest time going through all these different areas of the city and different things like that and trying to purchase commercial property to house these entrepreneurs. When I find a piece that I like or something, finding additional financing either through our program, Prosper Us, or who is an actual CDFI in the area, but they would come back with things like, well, you need a commercial builder who can tell you how much it takes to fix that property before we'll loan you the money to actually get it. And then finding that kind of, finding commercial real estate brokers who look like us. Because most of the time when you pick up the phone or you look at some piece of property and it's being listed by somebody who really doesn't want to sell to you, or they don't want to broker your deal because you don't look like them. And you know, and all of you know as well as I do, we've had a certain segment of the population come into our community and buy up everything, right? And they get financing much easier than we can. So maybe like the man said, if we can organize and maybe create some consortiums and work together and support some of the entrepreneurs in our space, we might be able to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. Another question. I saw a hand over here and one here. Oh, sure. Go ahead, Dennis.
I just have a real quick question. My name is Lamar. It's a good friend of mine, Dennis. And we've talked about doing some stuff here in Detroit, real estate, investing, and potentially trying to help the community. And I am a part of a group of guys who actually want to do something. We've been looking at like apartment buildings, different projects. But one of the major concerns that we've had, and I've had personally, myself as an investor, is contractors and dealing with contractors. And I know a number of other individuals that have had the same issue. And I'm just wondering, I'd like for you guys to speak to that. And how do we go about identifying, you know, reputable contractors that do what they say they're going to do? You know, when, I mean, I've heard of all kind of stuff with people that supposedly, you know, are very reputable, that was referred to me by someone from the city that was doing city work, and they messed up one of my properties. So that's been a major issue, and that's sort of made my group sort of apprehensive about looking at any larger projects, because, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with respect to the whole contracting situation, and if we're going to get it done on time, at what they say they're going to do. So if you guys could speak to that. And then, and also, I think you had mentioned something earlier about helping out individuals that are looking to start like early, you know, because we, individually, we all own properties, but we've never done like a major project or anything like that. And we don't necessarily have the know-how. You know, we have a friend of ours that advises us. He works in the business, and, you know, he does the financing, looking at the properties if they're going to be viable or not. But you know, we're kind of fresh in the game outside of just owning our own real estate, you know? Thank you.
I'll just touch on that just real quick, and I'll probably let Chase take it from here, because he's dealing with the contractors probably a lot more than me. But I would say that I've lost so much money messing around with contractors that I just stopped counting. I don't even, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And a lot of times I try to work with my own people, but they just don't have themselves together in many ways. It's sad, you know, and most of them are not licensed. So they're not doing things right either, you know. And I was just talking to Sonya just, I don't know, 5 days ago or something, and I said, Sonya, I want to, if you don't mind, could you share some of your contractors with me? You know, because she was able to locate some good contractors that did some great work. And I know those contractors can't be used for every single, you know, body. Because when you find a contractor, you want to hold on to them, you know, a good contractor, and especially if they are affordable, you know, and get things done in a timely fashion. But they're just not out there, and it's very difficult. But there's an organization that a good friend of mine, Chris Jackson, is a part of that, and he's an incredible developer in Detroit. He has a group that they have like a list of contractors that you could work with, Lamar, you know, and all of us can, you know. They have meetings, I think, once a month, something like that, at Marygirl College. And you can meet a lot of good contractors and resources over there as well.
So, READ is the name of the group. So the Real Estate Association of Developers. So it's not contractors, it's developers, but these are black developers at all levels. So you have the Chris Jacksons and Sonya Mays and David Alades of the world doing the larger development projects in the city. But then you have middle tier developers and burgeoning developers. So it's word of mouth, right? Like you talked about talking to Sonya, right? Like you have to talk to the right people and say, hey, I just saw you finish a project, like who did you use? Will you recommend them? And sometimes the person will say like, yeah, they finished the project, but I can't recommend them, right? But it's really that word of mouth. But, you know, Chico, as you said, it's sad, and it is, but also I feel like black contractors are going through the same thing that black developers are going through, that black architects are going through, that black appraisers are going through. Like it's being able to have all of the back of house systems, the accounting, all of the support things that you need to actually build your firm, the resources and the money to be able to get the insurance and the bonding. They're going through the same things. And I think the real estate developers, I keep talking about this ecosystem that's developed. I don't think black contractors have that same support system, right? There's not a place for them to plug into to really get that support that they need to build their firms and make sure that they're doing things the right way and having all the right certifications. So I think there's a gap here in Detroit, especially for black and brown developers who want to do things more legitimately and scale their businesses and find that capital. It's the same ecosystem issue. Where do black people get the money to do these things? I think black contractors are seeing that same problem. But for the ones that do exist and do good work, it's word of mouth. So I'm glad you mentioned READ. READ is a great resource. They meet once a month. Usually, 75 to 100 people show up. Again, these are developers doing work at all different levels and really sharing information and knowledge.
We have roughly about 10 minutes. Sonya, please take the mic and share any insights you have. I think we have time for a couple more questions after that, and then we'll wrap up and let you all freshen up for those of you